Hereditary peers. It's a bizarre yet weird throwback we have had in our democracy that has, well, yet to be really sorted out. But under the plans of Keir Starmer, he wants to get rid, finally, of those last hereditary peers permanently from the House of Lords. Now, I've said before, I'd like to see, the House of Lords completely reformed into a second proper elected chamber. But hey, if we can at least get, rid of the rest of the hereditary peers, I'll consider it, a good start towards, a future proper elected chamber. But of course, there's more changes that need to be made as well. The fact that, bishops get seats in the House of Lords. And bear in mind, there's us, Iran, maybe Afghanistan now the Taliban have got back in. There probably are other countries, but yeah, we are one of the very few countries that sort of technically, and again, technically fall under a theocracy because we have bishops who aren't elected, well, at least aren't elected in a general sense, but just get there because they just happen to be a bishop. And it's sort of, yeah, who knew we lived in this Dungeons and Dragons, democracy here in the UK? But hey, there you go. Lots of things to do. But bizarrely today, I came across this in Conservative Home of a piece defending hereditary peers. So let's see what this defense of the hereditary peers is. So before we do get into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button if you are new to the channel. And of course, down below, there's links to my Patreon page, Buy Me Coffee link, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. And let's crack on into this. So, this is from Georgina L. Gilholy. The title of Starmer's plot to remove hereditary peers is a signal of his constitutional ignorance. So, removing hereditary peers who get there and have their position through pure happenstance, just through sheer accident of birth, is constitutional ignorance. Take that as you will. So, anyway, Labour's plans to now upend our country's constitution are receiving little to no opposition, even as the plot to remove, getting really conspiratorial right off the bat, it seems, even as the plot to remove the last of the hereditary peers. Each day, dispassionate column now inches are now dedicated to the latest woke hysteria of foreign conflicts, whilst no one seems bothered about the plans to change Britain forever and conservative complicity in doing so. For all of Keir Starmer's dodgy campaigning for a so-called people's vote in years gone by, again, I think a people's vote was very apt. It would have given people a second say, which would have been, I think, very interesting to see what would have happened had we had a people's vote. But hey, it's gone past. We'll never know. Anyway, so years gone by, he has not committed to a referendum on his array of mooted constitutional changes. This is an emergency. So, Labour's plans to permanently rob yet more power from voters and dole it out to unaccountable, wasteful, and inferior institutions like, quote, devolved assemblies and parliaments. Wait. Voters don't lose power, they gain more power by having devolved institutions and assemblies. The people of Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland technically have more democratic say over what goes on in their countries than I do living in England. Because they've got a devolved institution. Now, yes, we've got more regional mayors coming online. They are being given slowly but surely more powers, and more powers are being devolved to them under Labour, that's for sure. And shockingly enough, I want to actually praise Conservative Home for a second, because there was an article. I'm not 100% sure if it would be a good idea or not. Feel free to argue with me in the comments, because I'm not sure about this myself. But I actually saw Conservative Home argue, and quite reasonably so. For the first time ever I have ever seen Conservative Home put forward a reasonable argument that we should separate the NHS and give those power and oversight to regional mayors. That overall, I don't know how to feel about that, but it's not necessarily, I think, that bad an idea. But no, do let me know what you think in the comments below. But I suppose there are arguments and for against it, but I have to say, doesn't really seem that like a bad idea. But hey, you let me know. So anyway, after this terrible plan to give people regional assemblies and parliaments, shock horror. Anyway, now they're pushed to sabotage our union and create more useless. I can tell what this person probably thinks about regional mayors. Political jobs has now flown under the radar for far too long, and is more likely, and is soon are likely to be fully realized. Bear in mind, the Conservatives have been in power for over 14 years, and they have pushed for more regional mayors. Where's your comments against the criticisms against the Conservatives rolling out regional mayoralships? Here, I have a strange feeling that Georgina here would be singing the praises of someone like Ben Houchen and not be calling it a, quote, useless political job. I have a strange feeling she has a lot of admiration for someone like Ben Houchen, but really, really hates Andy Burnham for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. But anyway, so why didn't the major politicians, commentators, and organizations step up and say something? I doubt it is because they failed to grasp the scale of Starmer's plans. Instead, I believe it is because they either do not care or actively support them. Probably actively support them. But there you go. After all, the Conservatives have had had over a decade to try and repeal New Labour's damaging attacks on our constitution, but have not. So, anyway, yeah. Gee, this person must really like constitutional reform, making sure that people have more democracy and a say of what goes on in their local, their local towns or cities or region even. Anyway, has the run of the mill PR or even devolved supporter even been offered both sides of this argument? Or do they just simply back it because it has even just become an approved opinion that, quote, the right sort of people hold? Much of the same approach to the House of Lords, including the issue of hereditary peers, most of which was scrapped in Tony Blair in 1999, and which Starmer has now pledged to bin wholesale. That is going to be good. These people aren't electable. They are completely unaccountable to anyone of the electorate. So, yeah, they should just be gone wholesale. Tony Blair should have got rid of them back in 1999. Unfortunately, he didn't at the time. And there are numerous reasons because of that: political clout, political capital being spent on other things as well at the time. I think Tony Blair really did miss his opportunity to really go full scale and turn the House of Lords into an actual elected body. I think Starmer will have an opportunity to do this as well. I don't maybe think this will happen in the first term, but second term, maybe sort of the end of the first term, you can sort of maybe start to see this thing. We'll see how this happens. But anyway, back to it. So Blair also abolished the Law Lords. Our previous final Court of Appeal to be replaced with the I love it. To be replaced with a vastly inferior and alien Supreme Court. The Law Lords, for people who don't remember that, because I had to go and look this up myself because I didn't remember this. The Supreme Court is, of course, a rolling judges who get sort of appointed. They serve terms. Pretty much judges who have been around for quite a while have, things. They aren't elected either, but at least there's, a rotation of this. They are constantly in rotation of who gets elected to the Supreme Court, etc., etc. The Law Lords was basically just like the House of Lords. You didn't even have to necessarily be a lawyer to be in the Law Lords. I think once again, that's a bit of a problem. I'm glad we got rid of it, but there you go. Anyway, and of course, with a number of hereditary peers already a rump of its former self, Starmer may now draw far closer to the Lord's full abolition, which his plans to staff our upper chamber with Labour peers will surely aid. You've just made an argument, and she's just made an argument for why probably the Lord should be abolished and made a proper second chamber. Because I have a feeling this person is okay when Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Liz Truss, maybe even Rishi Sunak will get to stuff the Lords with their own Conservative peers. I wonder how this person feels about that. If it's okay when the Conservatives do it, once again, not okay if the Labour Party does it. It's again why we need to get rid of the Lords. So while it would be easy to let the reverse snobbery get the better of us, reverse snobbery. No, it's just the Lords as it is just completely undemocratic. It's completely unaccountable. No one is elected to this. People are just given this just from happen to be given a certain amount of money to the Conservative Party. Congratulations, you're now a Lord. But there you go. So, well, these snobbery get the better of us and call for these privileged few to be removed. They should absolutely be removed. We would best not turn to this into this well-decorated trap. The purpose of the Lords is to offer balanced scrutiny of the populist and partisan moves made by MPs who must be re-elected by voters to maintain their seats. Well, why cannot that be the same for the House of Lords as well? Surely, if you made or at least structure the House of Lords in such a way, maybe you could do that. I mean, currently as it stands, I believe there are more like conservative peers, and of course there are different factions that are in the Lords as well. This idea of it offers balanced scrutiny of like, it's designed to stop populism, it's designed to stop partisan moves. If anything, it does act against and has acted in the past against popular things. But the Lords has lots of problems with it. We should not be keeping this every time she brings up like quote positives, you can very easily say, no, that's quite a big negative in reality, why we should get rid of it. But there you go. So the House of Lords can only achieve this if all peers, both hereditary and life, are permitted to sit, vote, and veto bills, which would require the repeal of the Parliament's Acts of 1911 and 1949, along with the House of Lords Act of 1999. Why are you obsessed with hereditary and life peers? Why can we not get someone elected? And here's the thing. If these lords are so good, well, then maybe they should be up for an election as well. Why not just open up the House of Lords to an election? and let people be elected. And if you get elected, congratulations, you're now a lord. Into the House of Lords you go. Or oh no, then that sort of dismantles the precious title of lord. If anyone can become a lord, then um, again, this is massive, very privileged sort of position of sort of being and becoming a lord. It's why conservatives like this want to protect it. But we should really get this sort of thing done and make it a proper second elected chamber. There is no reason to keep the House of Lords as it is. So, and Alexander Penningbruce summarized it best for The Spectator amidst the 2019 debate over the prolonging of Parliament. Since the removal of most of the hereditary peers, the laws has now acted without restraint, where reverence is required and given in to the Commons where it should have been assertive. Again, why such a focus on hereditary peers? Because ultimately it was the Supreme Court that said and sorted out this mess. It wasn't for the Lords to sort out. It was the Supreme Court who said, well, actually, you've done a wrong here, Boris, don't do this. Parliament's back in session. And it was the Supreme Court, and the way that the Supreme Court handled it was a far, far better democratic alternative than just, quote, letting the hereditary peers sort this out. Because then who are the hereditary peers answerable to? They're not answerable to anyone. And this would be my biggest question to this person. Why are these hereditary peers so important? Why are the lifetime people also so important? And what if they do something wrong? There's nothing you or even this person, if we disagreed with them, there's nothing we could do against them. We couldn't vote them out. They're there for life. Or, to pass on to the next son or daughter, just happens to be born first. Whatever, But anyway, just like supporters of radical and unpopular policies such as mass immigration, the modernizers, like Blair and Starmer, constantly attempt to portray themselves as a defender of the status quo rather than the radicals they truly are. You are easily being the biggest defender of the status quo, humongously so by defending hereditary and lifetime peers. They are skilled at portraying their plans as sensible and inevitable, despite being precisely the opposite. No, they are completely sensible and inevitable. We should just get rid of the wards full sail. You haven't really given an argument why we should be keeping the lords, except for this focus that somehow hereditary peers, it's like some sort of video game promotion. Congratulations, you have been dubbed a hereditary peer. You now get plus 10 wisdom to your parliamentary scrutiny saving throws. That's not how it works. By further trying to downgrade the Lords and ripping away its proper functions, he's not ripping away its proper functions, he's just taking away hereditary peers. I prefer he to go further on this as well. Starmer and his ilk are now setting the groundwork for the eventual abolition to be replaced with yet more party loyalists, or could even now be offered the constitutional infantilism and unificamerism of which Israel is one of the most chaotic developed examples. Almost every country in the world, almost, and I say almost because it's not the same for everywhere, has a second elected chamber. Italy have 3 chambers. Now, I don't think we need to go that far. I think 2 is more than enough. But to do that, to be able to give, people a say, to have, this stacked out, and you're so worried about, again, being stacked with party loyalists, why are hereditary peers going to be loyal to the Conservatives? What if they're more loyal to Labour? I have a sudden feeling this person might be suddenly wanting to get rid of hereditary peers if that was the case, but there you go. And of course, it would be far, far better for our democracy to have a better second elected chamber. I've said before, I would like a chamber, it changes sort of a chamber of like regional representation. So I would like, for example, the South to have sort of less representation, the North have a bit more representation. I think that might be a bit more fair, and then maybe you can sort of rebalance this out as it goes along, just like we have boundary changes and things like that. Because I think that will be a bit better, so that the people in the North can have a bit more say of what goes on in the Constitution. It makes a bit more sense there, and I think doing this by PR would also be quite sensible as well. Because then, let's say, I don't know, if you went, South Yorkshire, let's say you might end up with 3 Labour, 1 Lib Dem, maybe 1 Conservative, as an example. That would be fine. You'd still have 3 Labour, you'd have 1 Lib Dem guy, and you'd have a Conservative. And then throughout the rest of Yorkshire, you might get sort of North Yorkshire, again, heavily sort of Conservative area. You might get the reverse opposite. You might get 4 Conservatives and 1 Lib Dem. It gives people more opportunity to sort of see how, really political and the different variations there are in and around the country. And again, it's still, as I said before, it's sort of a very, very unformed, idea. It's just a very amorphous blob. But that's something I would like to see sort of go in more of that direction. But getting rid of the Lords would lead to that. And I think this is a good step in the right direction. So I'm really glad Starmer's doing this. But so far, she still has not given us a really good excuse for keeping these hereditary peers, except, Starmer might fill the Lords with, more Labour peers. Well, should we not get rid of the Lords then and turn it into an elected body? Anyway, let's finish this off. So, any fellow journalists who have now been forced to watch hours of parliamentary TV, even those who despise the Lords as an institution, as I once mistakenly did, you've given a lot of examples why we should get rid of the House of Lords, if anything, in your article, but there you go. Are now forced to admit of the quality of discussion in our upper chamber is of a higher caliber than that of the Commons. I will say that is true. That we have seen, especially since 2016, that I have said the House of Lords, the caliber of conversation, the conversation that's particularly happened around Brexit, were far, far better, and the discussions had were far, far better than that in the Commons. But again, no excuse to keep the House of Lords. No excuse at all to keep the House of Lords. You can still have that and that good caliber of conversation by making sure you get good candidates who stand for this and who sort of fulfill that role. So that caliber of conversation still can be there, even if you turn it into an elected chamber. And of course, there's nothing to say that these lords can't stand in that election. If they are as good as you claim they are, why would they not get elected again? Right? Anyway, Starmer's complaint is that the Lords is indefensible. It is indefensible. And for no other reason than it is that current year. That reveals his iconoclast leanings. Well, actually, yeah, he's got a good point. We shouldn't be keeping the House of Lords just because it's something we've always had. We should be changing it. We should be making it more democratic. We should be making it an elected chamber. If these people, as I've just said, are so good, why can they not stand for an election as well? Why, just through sheer happenstance of birth, just because they happen to be good friends with a former prime minister back in, like, I don't know, 18 something, or they happen to support the right king during the Civil War, that's no reason to sort of keep these people in almost permanence. The Lords is not as good as this person is making out, and I do not think they are as good Lords watcher as they claim. But there you go. So back to it. Starmer says this main complaints of the Lord is indefensible, and no other reason that it is just the current year. This reveals his iconoclast leanings and unveils his lust for compromising the accidental brilliance of our historic constitution. The accidental brilliance of our historic constitution. You mean the very constitution that Boris Johnson tried to fundamentally break during the proroguing of Parliament, which the Supreme Court had to sort out, something which you apparently said was wrong and bad. But if only Tony Blair had kept the hereditary peers, somehow it would have worked. Okay. Anyway, let's finish this off. So it is always much easier to destroy things than it is to build them, as Starmer will no doubt find once he's entered number 10. It is easier to destroy things than it is to build them, but we aren't destroying the House of Lords. We are just reforming it so that it becomes something else. If anything, we are changing it rather than destroying it. But yes, I'm sorry, this was a completely foolish defense of the Lords here. Georgina, you had real no defense for keeping hereditary peers. There was nothing from what I could see here of like defending a hereditary peer. There was no justification for keeping the Lords. You didn't really mention any good arguments, I would say, for keeping the Lords as it is. You mentioned, he got rid of the law lords and brought in the Supreme Court. Well, the justification for getting rid of the law lords is almost exactly the same justification for getting rid of the hereditary peers. Starmer is right, and not only just Starmer, but everyone who does not like the House of Lords, including the vast majority of Conservatives, which, as I have said, when it comes down to it, when it comes that time to getting rid of the House of Lords, this has to be a bipartisan attempt at doing it, because there are a lot of Conservatives that do not like the House of Lords and would like to see it reformed into an elected body. She doesn't mention that either, but there you go. So definitely something that does need to be done. And again, I've talked this before about yesterday, how we have a progressive opportunity to sort of do a lot of things. That is one of the opportunities that does present itself. Now, of course, I know a lot of people would love to see sort of PR and change sort of voting of Westminster. I agree with that. I want to see that done as well. But I've said before, I think the easier change at the moment is the House of Lords, getting that done, getting that changed into sort of a PR system, and then you can go off the back of that and say, oh well, shouldn't we change the Westminster voting system? And once you've got that argument only gets stronger and stronger and stronger as you see the benefits of having a chamber such as that being elected by PR. So we'll see what happens in the, of course, near future. But as I've said, these are the opportunities. These are the opportunities that lie before us that we can seize if we decide to take them. So we'll see what happens there. But as always, that was a very terrible defense of hereditary peers. So, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.